Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to do a little bit of multicolor marker stamping along with some emboss resist. But first I want to remind you to follow me across social media if you haven't already. Those links are going to be down in the description box below. Also, you can subscribe to my channel down there and click the like button if you enjoyed this video. That always helps. I'm going to be using these stamps today from Cracker Box and Susie Stamps. I'm going to be using that one on the left for my main stamping, and then I'll be using two of those on the right, but I did want to show you the whole set because it does come in a big set with those 5 stamps. Now, all the supplies and everything I'm going to be using are listed and linked down in the description box as well, so if you have any questions about ink colors, marker colors in this case, you can head down there and find all the answers. So I'm starting off with my Mini Misty. I've removed the foam pad out because I am using cling rubber mounted stamps here, which stamp great with this kind of technique that I'm doing here. And I'm using the 2 cats in a tree stamp from Cracker Box and Susie Stamps. I have a piece of cardstock that measures 3 3/4 inches by 5.5 inches, and I'm going to be using Memento markers to do my coloring on my stamp. I was inspired by the picture on the website of this stamp. Now there are only 2 colors on that picture, or maybe 3, but I wanted to do this all different colors, and especially in very fine detailed images like this, it's just easier to do it with markers instead of trying to mask off stamping. So I started off with the brown. I inked up just where the branches on the tree limb are. Then I'll go ahead and I spritzed it with water and I'm stamping down. I did a very light spritz, maybe 2 little mists pretty high above. So it's not getting totally saturated. Now I'm going to come back in and do this again and just apply another layer of the same brown over the top. You can do this as many times as you want to get the amount of saturation and the amount of color that you want. I didn't even spritz this time because the marker stayed wet long enough. I am doing each one of my little sections in sections, I guess you could say. So I started off with the brown, cleaned off my stamp once I had that stamp down, and then I'll move on to all the images on the stamp that I want to color in black. You could by all means do this in one go, color everything brown, color everything black, put in all your other colors, and then stamp down once. But I find that doing it in sections on a really detailed image like this is what works best for me. So I stamped the cats and the birds with some black Memento. Then I'm going to go ahead and come in with this red marker. And again, all the colors I'm using will be listed down below. I inked up the little hearts and stamped those down above the cats. Now finally, I'm going to take a green marker and color in all of the little leaves. This is a little bit tedious, and this is the part where I was most worried about doing 2 colors at once. I didn't want the green and the brown to end up blending together at all. So I found that doing it in sections and doing it one at a time, the colors, really helped me get this nice multicolored image on my card panel. I'll go ahead and stamp those leaves down and my panel is done, or my stamp on my panel is done. But I wanted to add a sky behind it. The best way that I thought of how to do this is to leave everything as is in my Misty. I cleaned off my stamp really well, and I'm going to stamp this down right over the top. Because I'm using my Misty, this works really well, and I can stamp right over the top with Versamark ink, and I'll heat emboss this with clear embossing powder. I should mention too that with my technique that I did, I used my Misty, or my Mini Misty in this case. It works really well to do it in sections like I did today if you have a stamp positioner. If you don't have a stamp positioner, just color the stamp as I did, but do it all in one go. Do your brown, do your green, do your black, do your red, all together. Then lightly mist it with water to reactivate those parts of the stamp that might have dried. You can even walk away for a few minutes if you need to, and always come back, spritz it with water, and reactivate that ink, so then you don't have to have a stamp positioner. So I heat embossed with clear embossing powder once over this, and that'll do just fine, but I wanted a smoother finish, so I'm going to put this back in my Mini Misty, stamp over the top again with the Versamark ink, and cover it with clear embossing powder for a second time. This is going to give me a smoother finish, a more shiny finish, and it's just going to ensure that this resists the ink really well. So I'll go ahead and heat set that very quickly. It doesn't take too long, especially on the second go around. And there you can see how much of a smooth finish I get with that second layer of embossing powder, and it only takes a few seconds. Now, the whole point of embossing was to be able to create a little scene behind my stamped image. So I'm using Catherine Pooler It's a Boy ink, and I'm using my Clarity stencil brush. This allows me to start right in the center of my cardstock, right in the center where I've stamped. And I'm not going to get those harsh lines. I can go in as heavy-handed as I want to with these brushes, and it just won't do it. So for somebody like me, that really is a lifesaver. I started in the center and worked my way out, up, and down, and I'll just make sure that I focus my ink really right where that stamped image is, and then I go lighter as I go out. Now I wanted to add a little bit of grass, nothing drastic, just the idea of grass. So I grabbed the Lime Ricky ink and another Clarity brush, and I just quickly brushed on a little bit on the bottom. I used a dry cloth to buff off any ink that was stuck on top of the embossing, and that did it for my panel. It was so super simple. I really wanted to put all the work into that stamped image, and the ink blending took a few seconds. To finish off the panel or the outside of the card, I wanted to mat my panel onto a piece of red cardstock. So I'm just cutting 2 strips of red cardstock, and then I adhered them on either side of the panel. That gives the idea of a mat without using up all that extra cardstock. I'll go ahead and use my scissors just to make sure I cut that nice and flush with both sides, the top and the bottom, and then I'll go ahead and stamp on my sentiment. I put my panel back in my Mini Misty, and I'm using Icing on the Cake ink, which is a nice brown ink from Catherine Pooler. I'll ink up that misused stamp. This is from that set of 5, and I'll go ahead and stamp that down in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm doing a double stamping just to make sure that it's nice and bold over that green ink that I've already stamped. And I did let that ink dry for a little bit, so I know it's not going to blend or mix together at all. There's a closer look at the sentiment put on the card, and then it was just time to load this onto a card pan or a card base. I'm using an A2 top folding white card base that I made myself. I'm using double-sided adhesive, and I just placed down my panel right over the top of that and gave it a good press, and the front of the card is good to go. I'll show you a few final pictures of this. I absolutely love the way it turned out, and it was so easy just by doing it in layers or doing it in sections, like I said, with those markers on that larger stamp on the top. So for the inside of the card, I'm going to keep it really super simple. I grabbed the icing on the cake, again from Catherine Pooler, and the Love You from that stamp or from the set of 5 that I used before. I stamped that down on the right hand side, and then I grabbed this lip stamp from Cracker Box and Susie Stamps too. It's so cute. I inked this up with a little bit of red ink, and then I'll go ahead and stamp that to the left of my sentiment. Now this would be fine as is, but I wanted to bring the outside of the card inside as well. So I grabbed some more of that red cardstock that I used on the outside, cut a thinner strip, and I'm just going to apply that to the right hand side. Again, I cut it longer than it needs to be here. That way I can just use my scissors and cut it flush, and I don't have to do any measuring. And plus on the inside of a card, it's a little bit harder to measure because you have that fold at the top. So just by cutting it longer and then chopping it off with your scissors, it saves you a lot of time and hassle. But that finishes off the front of the card as well as the inside. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I apologize for my voice. I hope it's better by the next one. That is going to do it for me today. There are going to be links on the left side of your screen that you can click on. You can also subscribe to my channel over there as well. Don't forget to check out all the information down in the description box below. Thanks for watching, and happy crafting.